For analysis, we're joined by Brian O'Donnell. He's the director of the Campaign for Nature and he's at the conference in Montreal. Great to have you on the program, Brian. Thanks for joining us. Now let's start with the very basics. Why does biodiversity matter?
Biodiversity really keeps us alive on this planet. We rely on biodiversity to pollinate crops, to clean our air, filter our water, to maintain all viability for life on Earth. So biodiversity is the central foundation of our economies and our livelihoods.
And world leaders have 2 weeks to agree on a plan to save nature. What, in your eyes, does that plan entail?
The most important thing is to really address the loss of habitat. We're seeing the destruction of land and the exploitation of the ocean. So a key target is to make sure that we maintain the viability of nature to be functional. That means, in our mind, protecting at least 30% of the world's lands and oceans by 2030. That's a central target because it addresses the biggest loss of biodiversity, which is the degradation of land and the overexploitation of the oceans.
Now, many experts call COP15 the last chance to reverse the decline of nature. We just heard in one of the reports species are going at 1,000 times faster than they should. Is that the state of biodiversity in your eyes? Is that how dire it is?
Yet scientists have told us that biodiversity is declining at rates unprecedented in human history. We're seeing up to 1 million species face extinction, many within decades. We're seeing immense overexploitation of the oceans with all of the large fish being removed, forests cut down in the Amazon, in the Congo Basin. So biodiversity is really in dire straits. We have a responsibility for future generations to address this crisis.
And one of the splashiest and most contested targets, as you mentioned, is a commitment to conserve at least 30% of the Earth's land and water by 2030. But the most debated topic, of course, is who should pay for it. Tell us about some of the arguments there and what the most likely outcome is.
I think that is a really important question, is that biodiversity loss happens throughout the world, but biodiversity is really concentrated in the tropics where developing countries are. And there's a responsibility for the wealthiest countries on the planet to help pay for the conservation of biodiversity. So currently, we're seeing some increased commitments from wealthy nations around the world, but not nearly enough yet to get a deal here in Montreal. So that'll be a big topic of discussion. How much money are the wealthy nations willing to put forward to make sure that those developing countries can have the resources needed to safeguard biodiversity in their lands and waters?
Okay, Brian, really appreciate you taking the time out from the conference to talk to us. Best of luck for the next 2 weeks. Brian O'Donnell there, Director of the Campaign for Nature.